Welcome to Infectious Diseases TV. We share useful information about infectious diseases. Today, we're cutting through all the noise to answer a really critical question by looking directly at the data. So let's just get right to it. Here's the big question for our explainer today. When it comes to immunity, is it actually safer to get sick with the illness itself or to get the vaccine that's designed to prevent it? Okay, so here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll set the stage. Then we're going to dive deep into two case studies you'll definitely know, measles and COVID-19. After that, we'll check out a risk scorecard for 6 different diseases, tackle that common myth about natural immunity, and then, finally, figure out what the safest path to protection really is. All right, Section 1, getting sick versus getting vaccinated. This is going to be a straight-up, data-driven look at the risks and benefits of each choice. To really get to the bottom of this, we're going to compare the numbers for 6 major infectious diseases. We're talking measles, rubella, chickenpox, whooping cough, COVID-19, and the flu. Let's see what the science actually has to say about it. First up, let's talk about measles. It's one of the most contagious viruses on the entire planet, which makes it a perfect and pretty powerful case study to start with. Now, just look at the difference here. It's pretty stark, right? On one side, if you get a natural measles infection, you're looking at a high risk of nasty complications like pneumonia. And get this, about 1 in 1,000 cases leads to encephalitis, which is serious swelling of the brain. Now, look at the other side. With the vaccine, the most common things you'll see are a temporary fever, which happens in about 13% of people, and maybe a light rash. And serious side effects, they are so rare, less than 0.1%. And this number? Well, this really brings home the ultimate price. The risk of actually dying from measles, even in a developed country, is about 1 in 1,000. That's a huge, life-threatening gamble to take just to get immunity the natural way. Okay, now let's jump to something much more recent, an example we've all lived through, COVID-19. Let's weigh the risks of getting the infection against the safety of the vaccine. And it's the same story, just a different virus. Getting COVID-19 carries a real risk of severe illness, death, and those long-term complications we hear about. Long COVID can affect up to 20% of adults. The vaccine, on the other hand, you're mostly looking at temporary stuff, like a sore arm or feeling tired for a day. That serious side effect people talked about, myocarditis, it's incredibly rare, happening to maybe 1 or 2 young men out of every 100,000, and most of those cases are mild and resolve quickly. And to put the risk of infection into perspective, just look at this number. Over 140,000 people died from COVID-19 in Japan alone in just a few years. This isn't just a statistic, it's a devastating reality. Okay, so we've looked at 2 specific examples. Now it's time to zoom out and look at the big picture with our overall risk scorecard. This chart just lays it all out, doesn't it? You can see the pattern so clearly. For every single one of these diseases, the risk from getting the actual infection is just worlds apart from the risk of the vaccine. For rubella, you risk severe birth defects. For whooping cough, about half of all babies who get it end up in the hospital, and up to 1% die. For chickenpox, if a mom gets it right before giving birth, the baby's mortality rate can be as high as 30%. And the risks from the vaccines, they're always the same story: mild, temporary, and extremely rare. So this all leads us to a really important question, one that I'm sure you've heard floating around. Is natural immunity actually better? Let's take a look at the facts and bust this myth. You've probably heard someone say this, right? But a natural infection gives you stronger immunity. And look, in some cases, like with measles, the immunity you get after being sick is, in fact, incredibly strong. But that raises the single most important question in this whole debate. At what cost? What's the price you have to pay to get that immunity? And here's the bottom line. The price of natural immunity can be ending up with a permanent disability or even death. Vaccines were invented for one reason: to give you that same protection without making you pay that terrifying price. And by the way, the idea that natural is always stronger just isn't true. The tetanus vaccine, for example, actually gives you way better protection than surviving a tetanus infection would. Plus, immunity can fade over time either way, but vaccines give us a completely safe way to boost it back up. So let's wrap this all up. Let's talk about the safer path to protection based on everything the evidence has shown us. The data is just crystal clear. Yes, getting sick gives you immunity, but vaccination is the scientifically proven, overwhelmingly safer way to get to that exact same goal. It's all about getting the benefit without having to take on the terrifying risk. And that really leaves us with one final thought. This isn't just about numbers on a screen. It's about real choices we make for ourselves and for the people we care about. So knowing the massive difference in risk, how will you choose to protect the ones you love? This is Infectious Diseases TV. Please like and subscribe.